You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tian. In addition to this show, I host Locked On NHL, and Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, still busy in Green Bay, Wisconsin these days, even though we're in the middle of the offseason as the Packers introduce Jeff Hafley to the fans and the media today. Your initial impression, if any, of Mr. Hafley?
I think things are going to change. Things are going to definitely be different, where it's kind of funny. I don't know how the weather is in New York right now, Gil, but we've had 60s the last couple of days in Wisconsin. It feels like football weather. It feels like the new season should already be here, but it makes it, with Jeff Hafley getting introduced as the Packers defensive coordinator officially today by Matt LaFleur, by the Green Bay Packers. Jeff Hafley calls the Packers the Mecca of football. He's damn right about that. He's already, I already have a very strong first impression of Jeff Hafley, Gil.
Yeah, he seems to be the kind of person who makes a strong first impression, and certainly welcome. And look, after what we've been through the last 3 years under Joe Barry, to change things up, I think, is vitally important for the defense, to try to be a little bit more aggressive in certain ways, to try to dictate more to the offense rather than respond and not make adjustments, which really, I think, was one of Joe Barry's shortcomings. These are all welcome things, but there are just so many unknowns right now as to how players are going to fit into this system and how it's going to work. So, you talk about football weather. I wish it was the season. Training camp started in 2 weeks. I'd be ready, but we have to be patient. We have to go through free agency, the combine, free agency, the draft, mini camp, all that stuff. But bring it. I'm enthused.
One step at a time. And another thing that I'm interested in seeing, though, with Jeff Hafley's scheme, it just seems like he's going to let guys play. He's going to let them do what they do best. And that's got to be music to the ears of guys like Jair Alexander, guys like Carrington Valentine, guys like Eric Stokes, if healthy. Just the secondary in general, there's a lot to like, where it sounds like they're going to be way more aggressive. They're not going to be really a 3-4 team. They're going to be more 4-3. But today's NFL, a lot of teams are playing a lot more nickel. They're playing 5 DBs on the field at a time. But it sounds like there's just going to be a lot more beef up front, to put it simply. And the first impressions from Jeff Hafley were pretty good. It feels like football right now, and I just wish it was here. But we're not even at the combine, like you said. We haven't even hit free agency.
Right. So long way to go, but one day at a time. And getting Hafley introduced was certainly a nice first step toward all the different things that are definitely going to be going on this off season. So, glad we finally got to hear him speak to the media and give us a kind of a general idea of what to expect when this team takes the field in the fall.
And we won't really know until we actually see it in training camp. Obviously, mini camp, rookie camp, that's all install stuff. It's very basic vanilla stuff, just learning the terminology, learning the language, making sure everyone's speaking the same language. He did stress two-way communication is going to be very important. And him being able to run a Power 5 program at Boston College, that his communication skills have got to be good. And if he's trusted to be in charge of an entire program, and that's where I think that's going to be a big benefit to Matt LaFleur too, is Jeff Hafley is someone who clearly is going to communicate well with his defensive staff, with his players and everything. And speaking of the players, free agency coming up and everything like that, some possibly big roster news coming up where there's no extensions for Darnell Savage, offensive tackle Yosh Nijman, and defensive back, primary kick returner Keyshawn Nixon, meaning their future contract years, they're now effectively voided. They are all slated to become unrestricted free agents in March. Gil, the money and the numbers say that we shouldn't expect any of these guys to be back, but should we actually expect any of them to be back?
I think the chances of them being back got a lot lower once those contracts voided. I'm not ruling any of them out necessarily, but I think the chances just got a lot lower. And, out of those three, I think Keyshawn Nixon makes the most sense to bring back, primarily as a return specialist rather than as a defensive back, where I think he struggled at times during the season. Savage, you've got Savage, you've got Rudy Ford, you've got Jonathan Owens. I'm expecting one, maybe two, but one of those three guys to come back, and it's looking increasingly like it won't be Savage out of the three to be brought back. But again, the NFL, it's funny. It ain't over till it's over.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out. But what it does tell me is whatever negotiations were going on, they did not reach an agreement. And, maybe they can after Savage and his agent or Nixon and his agent test the market and see what's out there and realize that they're not going to get what they're asking for. Mm-hmm. And maybe they come back to Green Bay for, less money than what they're asking for as of now. So I think the chances are reduced, but not eliminated. What are your thoughts?
So I'll give you a little insider knowledge that I picked up. And this was just, and take it with a grain of salt, but I went to that playoff game, the loss against the Niners, and on the plane ride back, I was on the plane just a seat away from a guy who is very good friends with Keyshawn Nixon. He's very good friends with Preston Smith. He was wearing Niner stuff. He was showing us photos. He's very good. He's best friends with Richard Sherman, of all people, too. And he said Keyshawn Nixon, he said essentially, oh, yeah, the Packers are going to bring him back because they're trying to bring him back. And who knows? A lot could have changed between now and that playoff, that season-ending loss in Santa Clara last month. But that's a good buddy who, you got to think like, hey, he's candid with him, where the Packers, I think, it sounds like they're going to try to make something work with Keyshawn Nixon. And I do believe they're going to try to make something work for him because he is a threat as a kick returner. He's a good return man. The Packers secondary, you don't know with Eric Stokes. There's going to be a big overhaul in that secondary coming up this offseason. You may need a guy like Keyshawn Nixon just to fill the roster, just for a body. The big thing is Eric Stokes' health. If they feel like Eric Stokes is going to be healthy, Keyshawn Nixon's probably going to go. And also, if they feel like Jaden Reed can take over return duties as the primary return man, that's another thing. And who knows? They may draft a running back on draft weekend coming up in end of April who can also return kicks as well. There's a lot of possibilities there. I don't think Keyshawn Nixon would command a back-breaking amount of money. I really don't. He's a two-time All-Pro as a kick returner. He's very important. He's definitely a threat in the special teams game. That's the only one I could really see who I could expect to return. But Gil, now it's like a matter of like, who do we think will return of those three? Who do you want back? Do you want any of these guys back next year?
Well, I think I would welcome Savage back if, and again, it's a big if, Jeff Hafley thinks he's a good fit for his defense. I think Savage, he's got pretty good athletic tools, but that doesn't always translate to his play on the field. And his big issue has been consistency. At times he looks really good. At times you're like, is he even trying, or where is he? So,
yeah,
if Hafley feels like he can work with Savage, would I welcome him back? Yes. But, at what price? And, to me, if I'm prioritizing them, Nixon would be priority number one. I mean, the last Packer to either go to the Pro Bowl or be All-Pro as a return specialist before that was Roel Preston in 1998, I believe it was. So you're talking about more than 20 years in between. Yeah. You don't want to give up on that easily.
No.
I would welcome Savage back, again, with that caveat if Hafley feels he's useful. And then, Josh Nijman, he's fine as a swing tackle. I don't mind him filling in if somebody else gets hurt. But, again, how much is he going to cost? You could probably find a lower-priced alternative out there, either in free agency or through the draft, or, you've been, kind of building up certain players already over the last couple of years in a similar fashion to what you did with Josh Nijman. So, is Caleb Jones ready to sort of, be that swing tackle? I don't know. Obviously, if David Bakhtiari comes back, which I don't think is going to happen, you have even less of a need for Yosh Nijman. So a lot of variables out there, but to me, in order, it would be Nixon, Savage, Nijman as far as who I want back.
And that's kind of the order. That's the order that I have too. Where Yosh Nijman, he played so well a couple years in a row as a young guy, where it just seemed like, hey, the Packers have some here. But then last year he couldn't get on the field. There are obviously a lot of issues in the practice field, and he couldn't earn playing time on the field. And when he was on the field, he wasn't that good this past year. It seemed like his play really dipped. I think they're moving on. And Brian Gutekunst, his track record being able to find really good offensive line talent late in the drafts and an undrafted free agency as well. He's really Brian Gutekunst. I have total trust, and there's a lot of depth at tackle. Caleb Jones' development is interesting because I could see him taking those next steps like a Yosh Nijman. Luke Tenuta is another guy who they kept on the roster but was on injured reserve all year. They may like him too, another offensive tackle. But with Nixon, the thing is, I would like to see him primarily as the prime returner because I love Jaden Reed's ability as a returner, but I love his ability as a receiver more. And I want him on the field receiving, not doing as a receiver, not on special teams. I don't want to see him waste time on special teams. I want him as a receiver because he's so dynamic all around as an offensive playmaker. But with Nixon, though, the thing is, I don't want him as the Packers' third corner. That shouldn't be the MO. But if you need a guy in a pinch, I trust that he could fill in and do the job. Yep. I trust that he's a perfect depth piece. He will contribute on special teams. It's exactly what you want in that spot. Darnell Savage is another guy where you're talking about a former first-round pick. We've seen him make big plays over his Packers career. He had a pick six in the playoff opener in Dallas, and maybe a change in defensive scheme is good for him, putting him closer to the line of scrimmage where he can attack. He is so fast. He is such a missile, but I think him playing deep safety was always an issue for him. And you got to get someone else who's better tracking deep balls. You've got to have him hover around the line of scrimmage because I feel like that's where he's at his best, is near the line of scrimmage. But like you said, and I think you put it very well, Gil, where it all depends on how Jeff Hafley feels about Darnell Savage, if he thinks he can use him. If he thinks he can use him and get him back to that first-round caliber player, I'm all for bringing back Darnell Savage.
Yeah, and then the other thing, you mentioned him, and we both mentioned him playing closer to the line of scrimmage. He's got to be more consistent as a tackler if he's going to do that. And, again, sometimes I feel like he's very good as a tackler, and sometimes it feels like he's tackling like a matador. And you can't have the matador tackling. If you're going to be the guy creeping up into the box and the guy playing close to the line of scrimmage, if you get a shot to tackle a running back, you darn well better bring him down 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe Jeff Hafley has an idea. Just aim and fire, man. Let's just just go out there, make an angle, and just go. And don't think, just go. And it sounds like Jeff Hafley's introductory press conference today, where he was stressing where we just want these guys to play. We don't want them to think. We just want them to play. And I feel like this secondary is kind of primed for that. He talked about Brian Gutekunst being able to draft the last few years and building up a really, really talented defensive room on paper and everything. And it's just a matter of just putting these guys in the right spot and letting them go. But we talked about the defense for the last few weeks. Shifting over to the offense. You ready for some offensive line grades, Gil?
Always.
All right. Well, first off, we'll start off with Royce Newman. Started a couple games at left guard this year. Started against the Saints and the Lions in weeks 3 and 4. The offensive line in those 2 games allowed 12 quarterback hits, 11 tackles for loss, and 6 sacks in those 2 games. A guy who was starting for way too many games before that. Luckily, the Packers, they realized, hey, this is not one of our best offensive linemen. He should not be playing even when we have a guy down. Gil, what's your grade on Royce Newman from this past season?
D. I mean, he started as a rookie, and he struggled a lot with stunts and with blitz pickups in general. And, the hope was, okay, he's a rookie. He's learning. Here we are 3 years into his career. His grades and his film don't look any better. In fact, he may have even regressed in some areas. I do not see, barring a big jump in his play, I do not see a reason to have Royce Newman on this roster in 2024. And I don't like to be that emphatic about, negative things I say about players, but he just doesn't seem to have picked up the mental aspect of the game.
I'm totally on board with that. And where I've been very critical of Royce Newman. I don't think he belongs on this roster. I don't think he belongs on an NFL roster. He just always looks overwhelmed. Now that win against the Saints in week 3, he actually looked okay. He played all right, but that loss against the Lions where everyone played bad, but Royce Newman was especially terrible. It was just a matter of like, after that game, it was like, hey, Packers knew we can't play this guy anymore. Unless it's an absolute pinch or it's garbage time, this is the only time we can play him. Where you talked about and the thing is, when he was at Ole Miss in college, I believe he went there. He was a quarterback. He was a tight end. Like he's very athletic. He's a very athletic guy. And you've seen so many guys in the past where they move from a skill position in high school to being an offensive lineman in the NFL. Jason Kelsey's a guy. Jason Peters, a future Hall of Famer, is another guy. And you thought maybe something there, okay, the guy's athletic, maybe he can learn, but he doesn't really seem to have it. I give him a D as well, and I just don't see a future for Royce Newman in Green Bay. If he goes on to another team, best of luck to him, but I just don't see much of a career ahead for Royce Newman playing NFL football. Next up, Josh Nijman. We talked about him just a little bit. He only started one game this year. That was against the Rams in Week 9. He was demoted on the depth chart after he started 13 games in 2022. The Rams in that game that Nijman started had 4 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and 5 quarterbacks. He replaced Zach Tom at right tackle late in that division round loss against the 49ers. And the Packers offense clearly took a hit when Nijman entered the game. Zach Tom is that good, and Nijman just isn't at that level. Not many guys are at Zach Tom's level in his defense. Promising young player, it seemed like dating back to 2021, but just hasn't really improved. Doesn't seem like he's going to be back in Green Bay next year. Gil, what's your grade of Josh Nijman this season?
I go with a C+. I think he was disappointing. I mean, he was supposedly going to battle for one of the starting tackle spots, didn't get it. And it seemed like one of the things that I heard about Nijman was that he doesn't play all the way intensely to the whistle. Yeah. That he kind of lets up once the initial block has been executed. And that can be real problematic for an offensive lineman. He's got all the physical tools. I like him as a guy, but I think he's really best suited to swing tackle duty. And, just disappointed that he didn't continue to climb and grow as a player.
Yeah, and for me, it was going back to 2021. I remember when David Bakhtiari couldn't go against the 49ers. We're always talking about the 49ers in the playoffs. And in the divisional round of the playoffs, and Billy Turner got the start left tackle. And I remember I was furious about that because it was Josh Nijman played better. He was better than Billy Turner. He was one of their best offensive linemen that year. And it just seemed like since then, you figured he was going to be the left tackle primarily this year with David Bakhtiari still dealing with more knee issues and everything like that. But he just hasn't gotten better. And like you said, I think it's a matter of just not playing through all the way to the whistle. And it's a bummer because I really liked him. He's a big kid, and it seemed like the Packers are doing the right things with him, but he's taken a step back. Overall, I give him a C- this year because he had a golden opportunity to really seal one of those offensive tackle jobs, couldn't get it, and just now he's on his way out of Green Bay and really had a tough year in substitution duty, really. Next up, we have Sean Ryan, second season guard. Didn't start any games, but appeared in 12 games, rotated in quite a bit at right guard with John Runyon Jr. You can make the case that Ryan was better than Runyon at times this year, but overall seemed to be pretty even between those two. Have to believe that he may be the starting right guard coming up in 2024. It looks like it's his job to lose with John Runyon Jr. coming up to free agency soon. He was suspended 6 games as a rookie, didn't see the field in 2022. Gil, it looked like initially it was going to be another third-round flop made by Brian Gutekunst, but throughout the season, it looked like there may be something there. What's your grade of Sean Ryan?
I go with a C for Sean Ryan. I think he definitely improved by leaps and bounds over what was a terrible, disappointing rookie season. You mentioned the suspension for violating the PED policy of the NFL. But I think he's a better run blocker than Runyon probably is, but his pass protection, he needs work on his technique. Yeah. He needs to be more consistent. His grade from Pro Football Focus, the run block was close to Runyon. The pass block was nowhere near him. And Runyon didn't have his best year either. So I still think there is a lot of potential out there for Sean Ryan, but he hasn't realized it yet. He did take a step forward. I give him a C.
I give him a C plus, mainly because when I think his first duty this year, where he filled in for John Runyon Jr., who left the game with an injury. I believe it was in week 5, week 6, and whatever game it was. And the Packers marched down and scored a touchdown. And the guy can maul as a run blocker. He can maul. And guess what? Matt LaFleur's offensive scheme, you better damn well know how to run the football. And guys who can block run block as well. Sean Ryan can run block. I think that's where he's at his best. Pass protection, definitely another story right there. But he's a guy where, again, he got better as the year went on. And him competing with John Runyon Jr. for playing time at right guard really said it all. Overall, I give Sean Ryan a C plus. I think there's something there. Plus, he spells his first name the right way, S-E-A-N. So I'm just going to put it that way. And then with John Runyon Jr., we talked about Sean Ryan. Now we're going to talk about the other right guard, John Runyon Jr. He started every single game at right guard this year. He also started every game at right guard in 2022 and all but one game in 2021. Not flashy, not horrible. He's just a solid average player, I would say, at right guard. Again, slated to become a free agent in March. He was pretty candid and open how much he loves being a Green Bay Packer following that playoff loss to the 49ers. May not be back with the Packers, though, in 2024. It's a business in the end, and as much as I'd like to see him back, he may be gone. Gil, what's your grade on John Runyon Jr. this year?
I was disappointed because Runyon, I'm a Michigan guy. He's a Michigan guy. I remember
his dad's a Michigan guy. Yep.
What?
His dad's a Michigan guy, too.
That's right. I remember his father playing in the NFL and at Michigan, so I've been following his career even before he came to Green Bay. And again, whether he was playing hurt, and we didn't know it, or he just had an off year, this was a disappointing campaign for John Runyon. And, he's a better pass blocker than run blocker. His functional strength has always kind of been an issue in the run game. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to be back in Green Bay. If he does, it would have to be for close to the veteran minimum for him to come back. And I think someone else will offer him more money elsewhere, more likely than not. I like John Runyon, but for this year, I give him a C just because the expectation was higher than what he delivered. He wasn't terrible, but he didn't play up to his own standards.
Yeah, and John Runyon Jr. is a very good pass blocker. You didn't have to worry about him at right guard. Mentally, he understands how to pass protect. That's what I could sense. But yeah, as a run blocker, that's where he kind of got bullied a little bit. And it's a little bit of a problem. And I will say this, where this guy was a 5th-round pick in 2020, and he definitely played very well. He's played very well in the NFL for a 5th-round pick. And you look at Green Bay's offensive line room, where Brian Gutekunst is very good at finding offensive line talent. I feel like John Runyon Jr. is going to get a very, very nice contract in free agency, a contract that the Packers will be like, no thanks. Like, we appreciate what you did, but no, thank you. We're not going to pay. Yeah, I could see him, honestly, with how bloated contracts are in free agency. I could see him getting $5 million a year, probably $10 million a year, where I just think that's too much money for a John Runyon Jr. It's nothing against him, but I just think that's the way it is. And again, I thought he was pretty even with Sean Ryan this year, and I gave Sean Ryan a C+. I also give John Runyon Jr. a C+ as well. I hope he's back in Green Bay for well below market value, but I just don't see it, Gil, like you said. And going over to center, we just talked about a Michigan guy, and now we're going to talk about a former Buckeye, Josh Myers. He started every single game at center this season. I feel like he got better as the year went along after a really rough start. He just wrapped up his 3rd year, and if you remember, offensive coordinator Adam Stenavich noted earlier in the season that Myers is playing his best football of his career. It was pretty laughed at and everything. But then as you saw, the Packers were getting better. He was improving, and things are starting to come together for Josh Myers. What's your grade for Josh Myers this year?
Yeah, the first half of the season, he couldn't get out of his own way, it seemed like. And, I always get frustrated by seeing this, and I'm going to defend Josh Myers a little bit. When he plays well, when an offensive lineman plays well, you don't notice them. And the thing about Myers, when he fails spectacularly.
Yes.
He whiffs. He hits the turf. He gets pushed down to the ground. So when he whiffs, it's all over social media because he just looks so bad on 3 plays every game. Maybe it's like he definitely finished stronger than he started. But, I view Josh Myers as of right now as a replacement level starter. He's a guy that every year you say to yourself, we could do better at center. And yet every year he probably ends up winning the job and giving you kind of the same thing he gave you. I give him a C overall just because, you look at his Pro Football Focus grades and you look at his performance. He's not spectacular in any particular area. He does whiff at times, but he's played 17 games now the last 2 years, so he's in the lineup. That's a positive. Seems like a good guy, even if he is a Buckeye, but
Hey now, you watch your mouth, Gil. My parents, I got Buckeye blood in me. You watch your mouth. I said that
tongue in cheek, so you he's a Packer. I'm going to back the guy no matter what. But I just feel like, and the other unfair thing about Runyon is he's always compared to the guy who was selected right after him in the draft, which is
Creed Humphrey. Yeah.
Yes, Creed Humphrey, which is not always fair because hindsight is 20/20. I just think he's a very average center right now, and I give him the C.
And I'm going to give him a C+ because he did finish very strong. And the offense this year in general, there were so many issues those first couple months of the year, and then they all got better. And the last few months of the year and going into the next season, there's going to be some high expectations because they showed what they're capable of doing. It just seemed like everyone knew what was going on. Everyone understood their jobs a little better. And speaking of, I wasn't an NFL or college offensive lineman, but I played in high school. And I'm telling you, if you know what everyone else on that offensive line is doing, it makes your job easier and makes everything easier for everybody. And it just seemed like the offensive line, as the season went on, they started to gel more. They started to understand more, and they just understood the scheme more. And Josh Myers got better because of that. Now, he's going into a contract year next year, and that's something where there could be a lot of motivation with that. He may have his best season of football coming up, but you got to remember that his job's not safe. I agree with you there, Gil, where his job is not safe, especially because your best offensive lineman possibly this year, Zach Tom, could play center, and Elgotn Jenkins could play center.
Yep.
And I guarantee you the Green Bay Packers, when it comes to offensive linemen, you want the best 5 on the field no matter what. And if they got to move someone to center to make way for someone else, Josh Myers may be sitting on the bench next year. But he's going into a contract year. There's going to be a lot of motivation there. I do think he got better, and I hope it continues into next season. Speaking of another young offensive line, well, the whole offensive line is pretty much young. This whole team was young this year. Rasheed Walker, he just wrapped up his second season, former 7th-round pick out of Penn State. He had a stellar training camp, and to the surprise of many fans, he won that left tackle job after David Bakhtiari went down for the season. Started 15 of 17 games this season at left tackle. He didn't start against the Rams in Week 9 following that miserable game against the Vikings in Week 8 at Lambeau where Green Bay lost 24-10. That Packers offensive line that day against the Vikings allowed 4 sacks, a tackle for loss, 8 quarterback hits. But Gil, Walker getting benched in Week 9 seemed to be the best thing for him because it gave him a kick in the ass because he was steady and he really kicked butt at left tackle after that game the rest of the year. Gil, what's your grade on Rasheed Walker this season?
I go with a B- for Rasheed Walker. Early in the season, he really did struggle at times. He seemed to have a lot of difficulty with defenders who moved inside on him in pass rush moves, whether it was a stunt or whether it was just a move to the inside, a double move. He got better at that as the year went on. I mean, when you look at his story, before his senior year, he was a possible day 1 or 2 draft pick. Didn't have a great senior year, struggled a lot, got picked on, in the 7th round, as you mentioned, probably because his initial grade or athleticism made him worth a flyer at that point in the 7th round. But struggled through his rookie year, but definitely improved as last year went on. And, again, is he guaranteed to be the starting left tackle this year? No, it depends on who gets drafted, what happens with Bakhtiari, although I'm fairly confident he won't be back. But I just like what Walker is becoming. I gave him a B minus, and the arrow is pointing up.
And I'm giving Rasheed Walker a B, and it just looks like Gutekunst found a gem. I think this guy has all the potential to be the Packers left tackle of the future. And after that Week 9 game against Minnesota, after he got benched, the Packers went 6-3 the rest of the year. And that offensive line allowed just over a sack per game, just over 3 tackles for loss per game, 4.5 QB hits per game. It got better. It got a lot better. The whole offense got better together. Every phase of the offense got better. Every level, every group of that offense got better. And in my opinion, though, that improvement from Rasheed Walker at left tackle, that directly correlated with the offense's improvement.
Absolutely.
Where he just was not, he didn't seem overwhelmed. He's a big guy. He's 6'6", and he can move, man. Like he's a masher and he can move. There's just, I really like Rasheed Walker and where the direction that he's going. Like you said, he is trending upwards.
Yeah, needs to work on the run blocking a little bit. I think most of our offensive linemen need to work on the run blocking a little bit. Yeah. And that, hurt the team a little bit at times over the season. But I like where he's going also. Arrow pointing up, as I said.
And we were just talking about left tackle, Rasheed Walker. Now we're going to move to the right side. Right tackle, Zach Tom, started every single game in 2023 at right tackle. He's not your prototypical looking NFL offensive tackle, 6'4", 304 pounds, but he's outstanding with his fundamentals. He never appears to be overwhelmed or overmatched. In terms of height and weight, how steady he is, how strong his footwork is, he reminds me of young David Bakhtiari. He really does. The way he plays, he's dependable, he's solid. His lack of presence, we mentioned when Nyman came in for him in that NFC divisional round game against the 49ers. And his lack of him not being there was definitely felt when he left that loss against the 49ers with a concussion. Gil, what's your grade for Zach Tom this year?
I love Zach Tom. I love his future. He is a smart football player. He knows he's not the biggest guy or the fastest guy, but he knows where to be and how to buy time for the quarterback by being in the right position or using his hands in the right way or his footwork in the right way to just get you that extra half a second that you need to throw the football. He's also graded out as the Packers' best run blocking offensive lineman this year. So I gave him a B+, and the arrow is still pointing up. I think, he has Pro Bowl potential going forward.
Man, I love Zach Tom, and I think I love Zach Tom more than you because I gave him an A. I think he was their best offensive lineman easily this year. I think he may have been their best offensive player overall this year. He's that good. He is so good. And I remember leading up to the draft that year, before 2022 draft, and everyone's like, man, this guy's just got Packer written all over him. And he doesn't have that NFL size. I think 6'4" is being a little generous on where he's listed height-wise. Yeah. Again, it's baby Bakhtiari all over again, where Bakhtiari he couldn't have been taller than 6'3" coming out of Colorado, but he was a 4th-round pick too. The talent was so insane there. And David Bakhtiari, it's debatable. He could be a Hall of Famer. Zach Tom, I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer right now, but he's definitely on that track where he's so reliable and he's just so good, and you don't have to worry about him when he's out there. And it's just a matter of arguing where is his best position. That's the big thing, is this guy can play all over the offensive line. He's a natural. He's awesome. And Zach Tom, I give an A overall. And if he, as soon as he gets a contract extension, that's probably the next jersey I'm getting, because he's that great of a player, in my opinion.
No, I really like him, and I am confident, he could be a starter at any of the 5 positions along the offensive line, and I get the feeling he'd do them well no matter where you put him. So, I'm very high on Zach Tom.
So the next offensive lineman, we have left guard Elgotn Jenkins. He missed 2 games this year after signing a lucrative contract extension in 2022, late last season. He's as steady as they come, Gil. He's reliable. He's consistent. Easily the Packers' best interior offensive lineman this year. What's your grade on Elgotn Jenkins this year? And as you can see, I have a jersey representing Elgotn Jenkins as well in the background.
Nice.
That's my guy. When I was in San Francisco, in Santa Clara, he saw me. He patted his chest for appreciation. It's like, that's my guy, man. What's your grade on Elgotn Jenkins this year?
I am a big Elgotn Jenkins fan, and his injury a couple of years ago was so disappointing because I think it really derailed his career to an extent. Well, not derailed, but he had to take a couple of steps back and then get back to where he was. And he to me, he can be a Pro Bowl left guard. He could probably be a Pro Bowl center. He did pretty darn well at right tackle before the injury, but then after the injury, he struggled there. I gave Elgotn Jenkins a B. I think he's steady. By the end of this season, he was kind of getting back to where he was pre-injury, but not quite. And I feel like this past year, if Pro Bowl is here, he was the next level just below what a Pro Bowl guard would be. I give him sort of in between a B and a B plus, but because I gave the B plus to Zach Tom, I give a B to Elgotn Jenkins.
And I gave an A to Zach Tom, and I'm giving a B plus to Elgotn Jenkins because he is, when he was healthy before that ACL injury a few years ago, which really stunk for Elgotn Jenkins, but his ability to come back in 10 months and at a very tough position where it's not easy to come back from an ACL tear. He was an A caliber player before that injury. I still think he's really good. He's a B plus player in my opinion. In my opinion, just you can rely on him. You can count on him. I think he's tough as nails too. He played through a lot of injuries this year. He had that MCL sprain earlier this season. He only missed 2 games. He's a tough guy. He's a tough dude, and it just you can count on Elgotn Jenkins. And it's like Zach Tom. He could play all over the offensive line, and having that versatility, it just seems like going into next year, you know for sure Zach Tom and Elgotn Jenkins are 2 of your starting 5. The other 3 are up for grabs, but it's that you can count on Elgotn Jenkins.
Yeah, and he's also a very smart player. He just knows where to go. You could see him thinking on his feet where, his reaction time is so quick, and he does the little things that make a difference. He and Zach Tom, you mentioned they're the 2 are going to be starting if they're healthy. It's because of the way they play the mental game in addition to their physicality, and I respect that so much in an offensive lineman.
And Elgotn Jenkins, the mental game has been there since he was a rookie. And I don't know if I've mentioned it before on this podcast, but there was when they played Seattle in Matt LaFleur's first year at Lambeau in the divisional round, on the first drive of the game, Rodgers hit Devontae Adams with a wide open. It was a wheel route and it was a wide open touchdown. But the thing is, that play doesn't happen if Elgotn Jenkins doesn't read the stunt properly. He read and it wasn't talked about. And I remember they showed the view from the Skycam view, and Elgotn Jenkins, there was a stunt coming across, and he picked it up without a hitch so perfectly. And it was a matter of like that doesn't get picked up. That's a sack, and that's a drive killer. And he picked that up. And it was just, to me, that was the moment where it's like, yeah, that guy's going to be in the NFL for a very long time. He freaking gets it. He freaking gets it. I love it. And so that's another guy I love too, another jersey that I have behind me, but may have played his last downs as a Green Bay Packer, David Bakhtiari, one of the highest paid offensive tackles in football. Started the season opener against Chicago. He was caught flipping off the Chicago Bears sideline to the fans, which is amazing for any Packer fan watching, and something that it may go in it should go in the Packer Hall of Fame one day. It won't, but it should. But he was declared done for the season following that game with a season-ending knee injury. Gil, I give him an incomplete grade because he only played 1 game. The guy, when he's healthy, is an A caliber player, maybe even close to A plus in my opinion, but incomplete grade for David Bakhtiari. I'm assuming that's the same for you.
Yeah, I can't, the amazing thing is he's playing on a bum knee. I don't think he practiced in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, even when he played 11 games in 2022, I don't think he practiced ever during that season, or if he did, very infrequently.
Yeah.
And yet, I can't say enough about him. Had he not gotten hurt, I think he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory.
Yeah.
Now with the injury, he may need 1 more Pro Bowl season or 2 more Pro Bowl seasons to sort of lock that down. Yeah. It's a shame. He's been a great Packer. I just can't see bringing him back on the contract that he's got right now based on his injury history. And I'll be sad to see him go, but I think it's sort of a necessary move.
And you never know. Maybe there's some way he comes back, but I don't see it either. And it's really sad because even that year he played 11 games and he didn't practice. He was still phenomenal. He's still so damn good. And that's what and Packer fans are really frustrated with how hurt he's been. not all ACL recoveries are the same. I'm telling you, it's just there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's like, yeah, modern medicine has gone a long way, but you don't know how someone's going to react. And David Bakhtiari is obviously, he's near the end of his time as a football player, and it's a bummer to see, because when he's out there, he doesn't need to practice because he's that good, and you don't have to worry about him, and he's a monster out there. But incomplete grade for David Bakhtiari, and I hope he's back in Green Bay next year. It just doesn't make sense that he would be, but who knows? We'll see what happens. Offensive tackle Luke Tenuta, he didn't receive a grade. He was placed on IR in training camp, was on IR the entire 2023 season. Caleb Jones, we mentioned him. He may be Yosh Nijman 2.0 coming up. He did not receive a grade due to appearing in only one game this year and really just didn't play that. It was pretty much inactive for every game this year.
Right.
So that rounds up the offensive line grade. So a lot to dive into and everything like that. We're both in agreement. Zach Tom, Elgotn Jenkins, 2 best offensive linemen. We hope David Bakhtiari's back, but probably not in the cards.
Yeah, unfortunately. And, one thing I will never question about David Bakhtiari is his toughness. I mean,
yep.
You remember in 2022, he ended up missing time because what was it? Was it appendectomy that he had that cost him 6 games? And
it's like that. You can't predict that, and people were upset about it. It's like
thing.
Yes, and it is.
With the Packers season on the line in the season finale, he came back and played in that last game of the season. He didn't have to do that. Nope. I do not question his toughness. It's just a bad luck injury and the way his body did not respond well to it. He's a Packer Hall of Famer, even if he doesn't quite make it to Canton. I hope he still could, but just an all-time great Packer.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, I'm just going to say where it's like him not being able, his post ACL recovery, he's not the first athlete to have a terrible post ACL recovery.
And he's not going to be the last.
No, most guys recover pretty well and they come back, but it's not all the same. Everybody has everybody's different. And that's just, David Bakhtiari is just no exception as well. But Gil, before we get to some trivia, what articles do you have coming up online for Packers Post and Cheesehead TV? I know you had an article about Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft and being able to see that dynamic young tight end duo go to work. I personally want to see that blossom into, quite the tight end duo next year.
Yeah, I am looking forward to actually seeing them both on the field healthy and being able to participate in the offense at the same time. That was my article for Cheesehead on Thursday, and that's really special. And I'm kind of looking on the Packers Post at different needs the team has, and I focused in on one position that isn't getting as much attention as like safety and running back and interior offensive line that I think this team really needs an upgrade on, and that was inside linebacker, where we don't know if Devondre Campbell will be back. And with the new system, they're going to need some off-ball linebackers to play, and I think it's a bigger need than a lot of people are sort of talking about at this point.
Very, very sneaky indeed. So, go check out Gil online. And it's always a good read. I read your stuff all the time, Gil. So I'll personally vouch for you. So, but you ready for some trivia?
I am ready for some trivia.
Well, Gil, you are also a huge hockey guy. You're you cover the Islanders. You do Locked On NHL podcast. So we're recording on Thursday, February 22nd. Do you know why this date is significant today?
Go ahead. Tell me. Why is this date?
It's the 44-year anniversary of the Miracle on Ice.
The Miracle on Ice. And I remember that game. And the amazing thing about it, to tell you how different the world was in 1980, that game was not broadcast live.
Yep. It was a tape delay for most of the country.
Delay.
Yeah.
And I heard on the radio the outcome before I got to watch it, which was really, really frustrating. And it still didn't ruin the moment because it was that emotional.
Oh, so cool.
To me, probably maybe not it's in the top 3 of the greatest sports moments of the 20th century for Americans anyway.
And and I will say this too, if you don't know about the Miracle on Ice, just go watch the movie Miracle and you'll cry, you'll be happy. It's amazing. And I wish I wasn't around 1980, but I wish I was, just for that.
Again,
But real quick, though, so again, the United States, they upset the Soviet Union in that Olympic hockey semifinals in Lake Placid, New York. Gil, there's one current Packer who previously played hockey in high school. Can you name this player?
Lucas Van Ness.
You nailed it. 2023 first-round pick, Lucas Van Ness. He was a standout hockey player at Barrington High School in Barrington, Illinois. Van Ness is currently listed at 6'5", 272 pounds. He was a pretty big guy back then, too, so you got to imagine he was a defenseman. He was the enforcer for his team. According to Sportskeeda, Van Ness logged 80 penalty minutes in just 17 games as a senior and 85 penalty minutes in 18 games as a junior. Gil, I'm telling you, as a Packer fan, I'm glad that guy's playing for our team.
Yeah, me too, and I'm looking forward to seeing his development over the next few years as well.
And yeah, it's like, obviously this guy was an enforcer. I think I would have turned around and just ran to the bench if I ever had to encounter him on the ice, personally. I don't like skating personally. And if I saw Lucas Van Ness on the ice, I would go immediately the other direction.
Well, that's what an enforcer does.
Oh, yeah. And Lucas Van Ness, 6'5", 272 pounds, the largest defenseman and the largest player on that Team USA roster in 1980. Do you know who that was?
Ken Morrow.
You nailed it. Ken Morrow. Yeah, you can't stump Gil when it comes to hockey. 6'4", 209 pounds. Lucas Van Ness has an inch and 63 pounds on Ken Morrow. Just imagine that. And Ken Morrow was a pretty big guy, too.
Yes.
But, yeah, you got to talk about other sports this time of the year, right, Gil?
A little bit, absolutely. Hey, pitchers and catchers. I mean, I'm looking forward to that, too.
Oh, well, we'll have some baseball trivia with the Packers too. I'm gonna cook up some good stuff in spring training and everything like that. So just stay tuned on No Huddle Radio here on the Packers Talk Network.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to it for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, that's it for today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter at Gil Packers and at GB Packer Sean to stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackersean@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And a big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. And thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.